The cafe was one of those places that tried too hard. Edison bulbs hanging from exposed beams, reclaimed wood tables that wobbled slightly, and a chalkboard menu written in unnecessarily ornate cursive. Sarah stood just inside the doorway, scanning the scattered tables for a man she'd never met. Her friend Rachel had set this up 3 weeks ago, and Sarah had resisted at first. "I don't do blind dates," she'd said, but Rachel had been relentless. "He's kind. He's real. Just meet him once. What's the worst that could happen?" Now, standing there with her coat still buttoned against the evening chill, Sarah was beginning to think she knew exactly what the worst could be. She'd arrived 5 minutes early, her usual habit, born from years of being the dependable one, the caretaker, the person everyone could count on. Her therapist had once gently suggested that maybe she was too reliable, that she'd built her entire identity around being there for others while neglecting her own needs. Sarah had laughed it off then, but standing in this hipster cafe, feeling overdressed in her burgundy sweater and good jeans, she wondered if her therapist had been right. She checked her phone. 6:15. He was supposed to be here at 6. She texted Rachel. "I'm here." He's not. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, "Give him a few minutes. Traffic is terrible tonight." Sarah found the table Rachel had described, near the back window, under a vintage poster of a European street scene. She sat down, ordered a chamomile tea from a server with 3 nose piercings and a kind smile, and tried not to look like someone who'd been stood up. The tea arrived in a ceramic mug that was too hot to hold properly. She wrapped her hands around it anyway, letting the heat ground her. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. The couple at the next table was deep in conversation, leaning toward each other like they shared a secret language. Sarah felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the one that always appeared when she was alone in public spaces designed for togetherness. She'd felt it at her sister's wedding 2 years ago, dancing by herself while everyone else paired off. She'd felt it at the hospital when her mother was dying, and all the other families had multiple people taking shifts, while Sarah sat alone through the long nights because there was no one else. Her phone buzzed. Not Rachel this time, just a notification about a sale at a store she'd browsed once. She set the phone face down on the table and stared out the window. December rain had started to fall, turning the sidewalk into a mosaic of reflected neon. She should leave. This was ridiculous. She was a 34-year-old woman with a master's degree and a responsible job at a nonprofit, and she was sitting in a cafe waiting for a stranger who clearly had better things to do. She was reaching for her coat when she heard them. "Excuse me? Are you Sarah?" The voice was small but confident, belonging to a girl who couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Sarah turned to find 2 children standing beside her table. Twins, unmistakably. Same dark, curly hair, same wide brown eyes, same smattering of freckles across their noses. The girl wore a purple jacket with a unicorn patch on the sleeve. The boy had on a dinosaur t-shirt under his unzipped hoodie. Yes, Sarah managed, confused. The boy stepped forward, clutching something in his hand. A phone, she realized. "Our daddy's sorry he's late," he said earnestly. "He got stuck at work, but he's coming. He said to tell you he's really, really sorry, and he's coming as fast as he can." Sarah's mind went blank. She looked around for an adult, someone who might claim these children, but the cafe was surprisingly empty for a Friday evening. The couple at the next table hadn't even looked up. "I'm sorry, but where's your father now?" The girl, who had a more serious expression than her brother, tilted her head slightly. "He's in the parking lot. He had to take a phone call, a work thing. But he saw you through the window and wanted us to come tell you he's here, so you wouldn't think he forgot or something." "He showed us your picture," the boy added helpfully, holding up the phone. Sarah caught a glimpse of a photo. Herself, smiling at some work event, probably from LinkedIn or Facebook. "He said you'd be wearing a red sweater and would have really pretty hair." "Burgundy," his sister corrected. "That's called burgundy, not red. Despite everything, the confusion, the absurdity of receiving a message via 7-year-old messengers, Sarah felt a smile tug at her lips. "It is burgundy," she confirmed. "You have a good eye." The girl beamed. Then, without asking, both children pulled out chairs and sat down at Sarah's table. Sarah started, glancing toward the door. Still no sign of anyone claiming these kids. "Does your dad know you just sat down with a stranger?" "You're not a stranger," the boy said matter-of-factly. "You're Sarah. Dad's been talking about meeting you for like 2 weeks. He's been really nervous." His sister kicked him under the table. Sarah heard the soft thud and saw the boy wince. "Ethan, you're not supposed to tell her that stuff." "Why not? It's true." The girl, who Sarah was beginning to suspect was the more cautious of the two, turned to Sarah with a diplomatic smile. "I'm Maya. This is my brother Ethan. We're 7. Well, almost 8. Our birthday is in January." "January 15th, Ethan added. "Dad said maybe we could have a pool party this year, but Maya said that's stupid because it's winter and pools are cold." "I said it was impractical, not stupid," Maya corrected primly. Sarah found herself laughing despite the surreal nature of the situation. "Well, I'm Sarah, as you apparently already know, and I'm a little confused about what's happening right now." Maya glanced toward the cafe entrance, then back at Sarah. Something shifted in her expression, a flash of worry that seemed too old for a 7-year-old face. "He really is coming. Sometimes work stuff takes longer than he thinks. He's a doctor. Did you know that?" "A pediatrician," Ethan said proudly. "He helps sick kids feel better, except when he has to work late and misses dinner, which happens a lot." "Misses. Jen says it's because he cares too much, but sometimes I think he just likes working more than hanging out with us." "Ethan," Maya said sharply, "that's not true, and you know it." The boy's face crumpled slightly. "I know. I miss him when he works so much." Sarah felt something crack open in her chest. She knew that feeling. The missing, the waiting, the wondering if you mattered enough to be prioritized. She'd felt it with her ex-husband, who'd always had one more meeting, one more business trip, one more reason why they couldn't start a family yet. Until the day he'd come home and said he'd met someone else, someone who didn't pressure him about kids and commitment and building a life together. "I bet he misses you too when he works late," Sarah said gently. "And I bet that's exactly why he's rushing to get here now." Maya studied her for a long moment, and Sarah had the unsettling feeling of being evaluated by someone far wiser than her years would suggest. Finally, the girl nodded. "Rachel said you were nice. She said you help people for a living, and you're really smart, and you like old movies." Sarah blinked. "You know Rachel?" "She's friends with Mrs. Chen," Ethan explained. "Mrs. Chen watches us sometimes. She's the one who said Dad should meet you. She said you both needed someone who understood about—" He paused, scrunching up his face in concentration. "What was the word, Maya?" "Loss," Maya supplied quietly. "She said you both understood about loss." The word hung in the air between them. Sarah felt her throat tighten. She wanted to ask what they meant, what loss their father carried, but before she could form the words, Ethan perked up. "Can we order something? Dad said we could get hot chocolate if you said it was okay." Sarah glanced toward the door again. Still no sign of the mysterious father. "I don't know if—" "Please?" Maya asked, and there was something in her eyes that made Sarah unable to refuse. "We'll pay. We have money." Ethan pulled a crumpled $10 bill from his pocket. "See? Dad gave us emergency money. This counts as an emergency because we're really, really thirsty." Sarah laughed. "That's not quite how emergencies work, but okay. Hot chocolate for both of you?" They nodded in unison, and Sarah signaled the server, who seemed entirely unbothered by the fact that 2 unaccompanied children had joined a woman at her table. Maybe this kind of thing happened here all the time. Maybe this neighborhood was friendlier than the sterile downtown area where Sarah lived. While they waited for the drinks, Maya pulled out a small sketchbook from her jacket pocket. "I like to draw," she explained, flipping through pages filled with surprisingly detailed sketches. A dog, a tree, what looked like a hospital room. Art is good for processing emotions. That's what my therapist says. Sarah's eyebrows rose slightly. You have a therapist? We both do, Ethan said, swinging his legs under the table. We started going after Mom died. It helps, mostly, some days more than other days. The words were delivered so casually, so matter-of-factly, that it took Sarah a moment to process them. When she did, her heart stuttered. I'm so sorry, she said, inadequate words for an impossible grief. When did? 2 years ago, Maya said, not looking up from her sketchbook. Car accident. She was coming home from a work trip and a truck ran a red light. The police said she didn't feel anything. They said it was instant. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them back around her now cold tea. She thought of her own mother, of those last terrible months when cancer had eaten away at everything that made her mom herself. Maybe instant was a mercy. Maybe it was worse. She couldn't decide. Our dad was really sad for a long time, Ethan continued, seemingly unaware of the weight of his words. He still gets sad sometimes. We can tell because he gets really quiet and he makes this face like the boy demonstrated, pulling his features into an expression of such profound sorrow that Sarah had to look away. But he's better now, Maya interjected, shooting her brother a warning glance. He laughs more. He takes us to the park. He's trying to be happy again. That's why Mrs. Chen and Rachel thought maybe he should meet someone. Someone nice. Someone like you. The hot chocolates arrived, topped with whipped cream and a sprinkle of cinnamon. The twins attacked theirs with the enthusiasm of children who'd been promised a treat and weren't about to let it go to waste. Sarah watched them, this odd little pair who'd invaded her failed blind date and turned it into something else entirely. So, she said carefully, your father is a pediatrician who lost his wife 2 years ago and is so nervous about this date that he sent you in as ambassadors while he finishes a work call in the parking lot. Maya grinned around her whipped cream mustache. Pretty much. And you two are just okay with sitting here with me while he does that. Ethan shrugged. You seem nice, and Dad said we should be polite and make a good impression. I think we're doing a good job. Except when you told her Dad's been nervous for 2 weeks, Maya reminded him. That's not impolite, that's just honest. Sarah laughed, a real laugh this time, the kind that came from somewhere deep and genuine. You know what? I appreciate the honesty, and I think you're both doing a great job. They beamed at her, and for a moment Sarah let herself imagine what it might be like, not just meeting this mysterious doctor, but stepping into the lives of these children who'd already been through so much. Then she caught herself. This was one blind date, probably doomed from the start. She shouldn't get ahead of herself. The cafe door opened, letting in a gust of cold air and rain. Sarah looked up, expecting to finally meet the father, but it was just an elderly couple shaking off umbrellas. She checked her phone again. 6:45. The man, whoever he was, had been in that parking lot for 20 minutes. Either the work call was very important, or he was stalling. Maybe he'd seen her through the window and decided she wasn't what he expected. Maybe he'd sent the twins in as a test, a way to gauge her reaction before committing. Maybe... He's not going to ditch you, Maya said suddenly, as if reading Sarah's thoughts. He really is on the phone. It's probably Mrs. Patterson. Her daughter has cancer and she's not doing well, and Mrs. Patterson calls Dad a lot when she's scared. Sarah's spiral of self-doubt came to an abrupt halt. That's his patient's mother. Lily, Ethan said. She's 6. She has leukemia. Dad says she's a fighter, but she's been in the hospital a lot lately. Sometimes misses. Patterson just needs to talk to someone who understands the medical stuff and won't make her feel stupid for being scared. The tightness in Sarah's chest transformed into something else. Respect, maybe, or recognition. She knew what it was like to be the person others leaned on, the one who answered calls in the middle of the night because someone needed reassurance or information, or just a voice on the other end of the line. She'd done it for her mother, for her sister, for countless colleagues and friends who knew she'd always pick up. Your dad sounds like a good doctor, she said quietly. He's the best, Maya said with fierce pride, even when it means he's late for important things. The door opened again. This time, it was him. Sarah knew it instantly, even before the twins jumped up and ran to him. There was something in the way he held himself, exhausted but upright, apologetic but not defeated. He was tall, with dark hair that looked like it had been pushed back from his face multiple times in frustration. His coat was spotted with rain, and he carried a leather messenger bag that had seen better days. When the twins reached him, he crouched down immediately, putting himself at their eye level. "I'm so sorry," she heard him say to them, his voice low and warm. "Thank you for coming to tell Sarah. That was very brave of you." "We like her," Ethan announced. "She's nice, and she laughed at our jokes, and she bought us hot chocolate." The man's eyes, brown like the twins', widened slightly. He looked past them to Sarah, and their gazes met across the cafe. "You bought them? I'm so sorry. They weren't supposed to—" Sarah stood up, suddenly nervous in a way she hadn't been while talking to two 7-year-olds. "It's fine, really. They kept me company." He straightened up, keeping one hand on Ethan's shoulder and the other on Maya's. As he walked toward her table, Sarah noticed the details. The lines around his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights, the wedding ring that was no longer on his finger but had left a faint tan line behind, the way his smile was both hopeful and terrified. "I'm James," he said, extending his hand when he reached her. "And I'm mortified. This is not how tonight was supposed to go." Sarah shook his hand. His grip was warm, steady, the handshake of someone who touched people for a living and knew how to convey reassurance through contact. "I'm Sarah, and honestly, this is already more interesting than most of my dates." He laughed, a sound that seemed to surprise him as much as it pleased him. "That's good, I think." He pulled out a chair but didn't sit yet. "I really am sorry. I got a call from a patient's mother just as I was parking. Her daughter is in the hospital and she was panicking about the latest test results, and I couldn't hang up on her." "Maya told me," Sarah said, gesturing for him to sit, "about Lily. You don't need to apologize for that." Something in his expression shifted, relief mixed with something deeper, something that looked like recognition. "Most people wouldn't understand." "My mother had cancer," Sarah said simply. "Stage 4. I spent 18 months managing her care while working full-time. I know exactly what it's like to need someone on the other end of the phone who won't rush you off or make you feel like you're being a burden." James sat down slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. "I'm sorry about your mother. I'm sorry about your wife." The words hung between them, heavy with shared understanding. The twins, who had climbed back into their chairs, watched this exchange with the focused attention of children who'd learned to read adult emotions for signs of danger or safety. Finally, Maya cleared her throat. "Dad, can we get dinner here? They have mac and cheese." James blinked, seemingly pulled back from wherever his thoughts had taken him. "I thought you guys were going to eat at Mrs. Chen's." "We told her we wanted to eat with you," Ethan said. "Since you were finally going on a date and everything, we wanted to make sure it went okay." James closed his eyes briefly, and Sarah could see him fighting between embarrassment and love. "Guys, Sarah and I were supposed to have dinner alone. That was the whole point of a date. But you were late," Maya pointed out reasonably, "and we kept her company. So now we're all together. That's nice, right?" Sarah bit her lip to keep from laughing. James looked at her helplessly. "I can take them to Mrs. Chen's. This is not how I wanted this evening to go. I wanted to make a good first impression, not show up half an hour late with my children as chaperones." But Sarah was looking at the twins, at Ethan's hopeful face and Maya's carefully neutral expression that didn't quite hide the anxiety underneath. She thought about what they'd told her, about therapy and loss and a father who worked too much because he was good at his job and cared about sick children. She thought about the crumpled $10 bill and the emergency money and the way they'd sat down at her table like they belonged there. They can stay, she said. James stared at her. You're serious? I'm serious. They've already told me all your secrets anyway. The nervousness, the work schedule, the fact that you've been looking forward to this for 2 weeks. She grinned at Maya and Ethan, who grinned back. Plus, I already bought them hot chocolate. Might as well commit to the whole experience. James looked like he wanted to argue, but Maya was already waving down the server, and Ethan was bouncing in his seat with excitement. He turned back to Sarah with an expression that was equal parts gratitude and disbelief. You're either incredibly kind or incredibly crazy. Maybe both, Sarah said. My therapist hasn't quite decided yet. He laughed again, more freely this time, and Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. That tight, defensive thing that had been there since her divorce, since her mother's death, since all the time she'd tried to be enough for people who ultimately left anyway. They ordered dinner, mac and cheese for the twins, pasta primavera for Sarah, and something with chicken for James that he barely touched because he spent most of the meal answering the twins' questions and trying to steer the conversation away from embarrassing topics. It didn't work. Ethan told Sarah about the time James had attempted to make pancakes and set off the smoke alarm. Maya shared that their dad sang off-key in the shower. James buried his face in his hands and apologized approximately 17 times. Sarah loved every minute of it. There was something magnetic about watching this small, damaged family try to piece themselves back together. James was clearly doing his best, asking the kids about school, reminding them to use napkins, cutting Ethan's mac and cheese into smaller bites even though the boy insisted he could do it himself. The twins, for their part, seemed to orbit around him like small planets, constantly checking to make sure he was still there, still present, still theirs. So, Sarah said during a brief lull when the twins were focused on their food, Rachel set this up? James nodded, looking sheepish. Through Mrs. Chen, yeah, I didn't think I was ready to date, but they both kept saying it had been 2 years, and I needed to at least try to move forward and… He stopped, running a hand through his hair. Sorry, that's probably not what you want to hear on a first date, that I'm here reluctantly. I was reluctant too, Sarah admitted. Rachel's been trying to set me up for months. I kept saying no. What changed? Sarah considered this. Honestly? I got tired of being alone. Not lonely, exactly, just alone. Coming home to an empty apartment, eating dinner by myself, having no one to tell about my day, it started to feel less like independence and more like isolation. James nodded slowly. That's exactly it. The kids help. They're always there, always needing something, always filling the space. But at night, after they're asleep, the house gets so quiet. And I remember what it used to be like when there was someone else there. Someone to talk to about the weird case at work or the funny thing Ethan said at breakfast. And I miss that, even though it feels disloyal to miss it. It's not disloyal, Sarah said firmly. Missing something you had doesn't diminish what you have now. It just means you're human. He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. How are you so understanding about all of this? Most people, when they find out I'm a widower with kids, they either get weird and overly sympathetic, or they run for the hills. You're just here. Present. Real. Sarah shrugged. I've learned that life is messy and complicated, and the people who pretend otherwise are usually the ones running from their own mess. I'd rather be honest about the hard stuff than pretend it doesn't exist. Dad, Maya interrupted, tugging on James's sleeve. Can we tell Sarah about the aquarium? James smiled. If you want to. Maya turned to Sarah with barely contained excitement. We're doing a field trip next month, to the big aquarium downtown. Dad said he'd come as a chaperone if he can get time off work. We're going to see the sharks and the penguins, and there's this huge tank where you can walk through and the fish are all around you like you're underwater. That sounds amazing, Sarah said. I love aquariums. You should come, Ethan said immediately. Buddy, Sarah probably has her own things. I'd love to, Sarah heard herself say. 3 pairs of eyes turned to her in surprise. "I mean, if that's okay," she added quickly. "I don't want to intrude on your school event." James looked stunned. "You'd want to come on a field trip with 7-year-olds to look at fish?" "I work with middle schoolers in an after-school program," Sarah said. 7-year-olds sound delightful by comparison. And yes, I genuinely love aquariums, the jellyfish exhibit especially. There's something peaceful about watching them drift. Maya and Ethan exchanged glances, some kind of twin communication passing between them. Then they both looked at their father expectantly. James cleared his throat. I mean, if you're serious, they'd love to have you there. I'd love to have you there, but it's a month away. You might feel differently by then." The implication was clear. This might not work out. They might go on this one strange date and realize they weren't compatible. A month was a long time to commit to something when they'd only just met. But Sarah found herself smiling. "Then I guess we'll have to see each other again before then. You know, to make sure we still like each other enough to spend a day looking at fish together." James's expression transformed, hope blooming across his features like something that had been dormant for too long. "Yeah? You'd want to do this again?" "Well, maybe without the half-hour wait and the work emergency," Sarah teased gently. "But yes, I'd like to do this again." Ethan pumped his fist in the air. "Yes, Maya, we did it." "Did what, exactly?" James asked suspiciously. "Made sure you didn't mess this up," Maya said primly. "Mrs. Chen said we should come with you to make sure you didn't get too nervous and say something weird." James's face went red. "Mrs. Chen said what?" "That you're out of practice with dating and might need backup," Ethan explained. "And she was right. You were super late and you looked all stressed when you came in. But then Sarah was nice about it because we told her you were helping Lily's mom, and now everything is good." James looked at Sarah with a mixture of horror and resignation. "I swear I didn't plan this. I thought they were staying with Mrs. Chen all evening. I had no idea they were going to ambush my date." Sarah was laughing now, real and unrestrained. "It's fine, honestly. This is the best blind date I've ever been on." "How many blind dates have you been on?" "Including this one?" "1." He grinned, and Sarah noticed the way it changed his whole face, softening the tired lines, brightening his eyes, making him look younger and lighter. "Well, then I'm honored to have set such a high bar." They finished dinner in a comfortable rhythm of conversation that flowed between the 4 of them. Sarah learned that Maya wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up, and Ethan was convinced he'd be a professional soccer player. James talked about a new initiative at the hospital to make pediatric care more accessible to low-income families. Sarah shared stories from her work at the nonprofit, the after-school program she'd helped develop, the kids she'd seen transform from withdrawn and struggling to confident and thriving. It wasn't until they were putting on their coats to leave that Sarah's phone buzzed with a call. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. Her sister. Amy never called unless something was wrong. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, stepping away from the group. "I need to take this." She answered. "Amy, what's wrong?" Her sister's voice was tight with tears. "It's Dad. He fell. He's at the hospital and they're saying it might be his hip. I'm here, but I don't understand what the doctors are telling me, and I need you, Sarah. Can you come?" Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle back onto her shoulders. "Which hospital?" "St. Catherine's, the emergency room." St. Catherine's was across town, at least a 40-minute drive in Friday night traffic. Sarah looked back at James and the twins who were waiting near the door and felt something tear inside her. "I'll be there as soon as I can." She ended the call and walked back to them, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I have to go. Family emergency." James's expression shifted immediately to concern. "Is everything okay? Is there anything I can do?" "My father fell. They think it's his hip. I need to get to St. Catherine's." "I work at St. Catherine's," James said immediately. "I can—" He stopped, glancing at the twins. I mean, I would offer to go with you, but I have the kids and I can't just—" "It's fine," Sarah said, even though it wasn't, even though she wanted nothing more than to have someone go with her, to not face this alone. "You've already done enough tonight. This was lovely. Really." She started to turn away, but Maya grabbed her hand. "Sarah, wait. Is your dad going to be okay?" The genuine concern in the little girl's voice almost broke her. "I hope so, sweetie. Hip fractures can be serious for older people, but the doctors will take good care of him." "St. Catherine's is a good hospital," Ethan added seriously. "Dad says they have the best doctors." "Second best," James corrected with a small smile. "The best doctors are at Children's, but St. Catherine's is definitely in the top 3. Sarah managed a real smile this time. "Thank you. Both of you. All of you." She looked at James. "I'm sorry this got cut short." "Don't apologize. Family comes first. Always." He hesitated, then pulled out his phone. "Can I give you my number, in case you need anything? I might not be able to leave the kids, but I know a lot of the staff at St. Catherine's. I can make some calls, make sure your father gets good care." Sarah gave him her number and watched as he typed it into his phone. A moment later, her phone buzzed with a text. "This is James. I mean what I said. Call if you need anything. I'll be thinking about you." She looked up at him, finding his eyes steady on hers. "Thank you," she said softly. Then she was out the door, into the rain, running to her car. The drive to St. Catherine's was a blur of red lights and windshield wipers and the sick feeling in her stomach that she'd carried through her mother's entire illness. Not again. Please, not again. The emergency room was chaos. Fluorescent lights too bright, people in various states of distress, the smell of antiseptic and fear. Sarah found her sister in the waiting area, mascara streaked down her face, looking younger than her 32 years. "They took him for X-rays," Amy said, collapsing into Sarah's arms. "He was just getting the mail. He slipped on the wet steps and went down so hard. Sarah, what if he needs surgery? What if he can't live alone anymore? I can't, with the kids and work and everything. I can't take care of him like you did for Mom." "Shh," Sarah soothed, rubbing her sister's back. "We'll figure it out, one step at a time. Let's just see what the X-rays show." They waited. An hour passed, then 2. Sarah texted updates to Rachel, who responded with heart emojis and offers to bring coffee. She didn't text James, even though she wanted to. This wasn't his problem. They'd had one date. One weird, unconventional date. She couldn't drag him into her family drama. But then her phone buzzed. "How's your father? Have you heard anything yet?" Sarah stared at the message, something warm unfurling in her chest despite the fear and exhaustion. She typed back, "Still waiting for X-rays. It's been 2 hours. My sister is falling apart." His response came quickly. "ER wait times are brutal, but 2 hours for X-rays is actually moving pretty fast. That's a good sign. Means they don't think it's immediately critical. Are you doing okay?" "Trying to be. I'm the one who's supposed to hold it together." "Who holds it together for you?" The question hit her like a physical blow. She didn't have an answer. For the past 3 years, since her divorce, since her mother's diagnosis, she'd been the strong one, the capable one, the one everyone leaned on. But who did she lean on? Rachel, sometimes. Her therapist during scheduled appointments. But, mostly, no one. She held it together because that's what she did. Before she could figure out how to respond, another message came through. "Sorry, that was too personal for someone you met 3 hours ago. But for what it's worth, you don't have to hold it together all the time. Not with me." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She was typing a response when a doctor appeared, calling her father's name. She and Amy jumped up, rushing over. "Hip fracture," the doctor confirmed. "He's going to need surgery to repair it. We're admitting him now and scheduling the procedure for tomorrow morning. Given his age and overall health, the prognosis is good. but recovery will take time, probably 3 to 4 months before he's fully mobile again. Sarah's mind was already racing through logistics. Who would stay with him during recovery? How to arrange physical therapy? Whether his house was set up for someone with limited mobility. Amy was asking questions about the surgery itself, her voice high and panicked. The doctor left them with discharge papers and instructions. Amy turned to Sarah with wild eyes. He can't go back to his house alone. Not for months. Sarah, I don't know what to do. He'll come stay with me, Sarah heard herself say. I have the extra bedroom. I can work from home a few days a week. We'll figure it out. But your job is at a non-profit that values work-life balance. It'll be fine. Amy threw her arms around her. Thank you. God, Sarah, thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you. Sarah held her sister and felt the familiar weight of being needed, being essential, being the one everyone counted on. It should have felt good. It used to feel good. But lately, it just felt heavy. When Amy finally pulled away to go sit with their father in his room, Sarah collapsed into a waiting room chair and pulled out her phone. She saw James's last message. You don't have to hold it together all the time. Not with me. And felt something crack open inside her. She typed, hip fracture, surgery tomorrow. He'll be living with me during recovery. I'm trying not to think about how this is going to work with my job and my life and everything else. The response was immediate. That's a lot to take on. How are you doing? Sarah laughed, a sound somewhere between humor and hysteria. Honestly, I'm terrified and exhausted, and I really wish you were here, which is crazy because we barely know each other. She sent it before she could second-guess herself. Then she waited, watching the 3 dots appear and disappear. Finally, I wish I was there too. I had to get the twins home and settled, but I keep thinking about you sitting in that waiting room. I called a friend who's an orthopedic surgeon at St. Catherine's, Dr. Marcus Chen. He's going to check in on your father, make sure he gets top-tier care. Sarah felt tears spill over. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. And Sarah, what you're doing for your father, taking him in, putting your life on hold, that's incredibly generous. But make sure you're taking care of yourself too. You can't pour from an empty cup. Everyone keeps telling me that. I don't know how to do anything else. Then maybe I can help you learn, if you want. Sarah closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the kindness of this near stranger who'd been late to their date but had spent the last 3 hours checking in on her. I'd like that, she typed. A lot. Good, because Maya and Ethan already asked me 3 times if we're going to see you again. I told them yes. I hope that's okay. Despite everything, the fear, the exhaustion, the overwhelming responsibility, Sarah smiled. It's more than okay. They texted on and off for the next 2 hours while Sarah waited for her father to get settled in a room. James sent her updates on the twins' bedtime routine. Ethan insisted on wearing his dinosaur costume to bed. I've given up fighting that battle. And funny anecdotes from work. Spent 20 minutes today convincing a 4-year-old that stethoscopes aren't magic wands. She was not persuaded. Sarah sent back snippets from the hospital. Amy's dramatic reactions, the kind nurse who brought them coffee, the way her father kept apologizing for being a burden. Around midnight, Amy convinced Sarah to go home and get some rest. You're exhausted. I'll stay with Dad tonight. You can come back in the morning before the surgery. Sarah drove home through empty streets, her brain too wired to feel the exhaustion her body carried. When she finally got to her apartment, a small 1-bedroom with good light and minimal furniture, she stood in the doorway of her extra room, mentally cataloging what she'd need to move or rearrange to make space for her father. Her phone buzzed. Home safe. Just got in, already planning how to turn my office into a recovery room. You're going to need a hospital bed, and a commode, and probably a shower chair. I can send you a list of medical supply companies. How do you know so much about post-surgical care for elderly patients? My wife's mother had a similar surgery a few years before the accident. I helped set up their house. I remember what worked and what didn't. Sarah sat on her couch, still in her coat, and typed carefully. Can I ask what happened? With your wife? Maya and Ethan mentioned it, but I don't want to pry. The response took longer this time. Car accident. She was driving home from a conference. She was a graphic designer, really talented. A truck ran a red light. She died at the scene. The twins were with my mother that night. I was at the hospital with a patient in crisis. I got the call around 9 p.m. By the time I got to the accident site, she was already gone. James, I'm so sorry. It was the worst night of my life. Telling the kids the next morning was worse. They were 5. They didn't understand why Mommy wasn't coming home. Maya kept asking if I could fix it, because I'm a doctor, and doctors fix people. I had to explain that some things can't be fixed. Sarah's vision blurred with tears. How did you get through it? Badly. At first, I threw myself into work, which was a mistake because I was barely there for the twins when they needed me most. My mother moved in for 6 months to help. Therapy started around month 3, for all of us. Slowly, we figured out how to function. Not the same as before. Different. A new kind of normal. And now you're ready to date. I don't know if I'd say ready. More like willing to try. Mrs. Chen was right. 2 years is long enough to live in the past. The twins need to see that life can still have joy and possibility. And I need to remember that too. Sarah wiped her eyes. I'm glad you were willing to try, even if your kids crash the date. Best decision I've made in 2 years, even with the work emergency and your family crisis. Or maybe because of those things. Real life isn't perfect dinner conversation and careful small talk. It's emergencies and complications and figuring out how to show up for each other anyway. Is that what we're doing? Showing up for each other? I hope so. If you want that. Sarah thought about the evening, the twins at her table, James's hand in hers, the way he'd made calls to ensure her father got good care, the texts that had kept her grounded through hours of waiting. I want that, she typed. I really want that. Then let's figure it out together, one day at a time. Sarah finally took off her coat and got ready for bed. But before she turned out the light, she sent one more message. Thank you. For tonight. For all of it. For being exactly what I needed even though I didn't know I needed it. Same to you. Sleep well, Sarah. Tomorrow will be hard, but you won't have to face it alone. She fell asleep with her phone in her hand and a small smile on her face. The surgery went well. Sarah sat with her sister in the waiting room, drinking bad coffee and fielding calls from relatives. Around hour 3, her phone buzzed with a message from James. Just finished my morning rounds. How's your father? Still in surgery. Should be done soon. I'm between appointments. Want some company. Sarah's heart jumped. You don't have to do that. I know. I want to. 20 minutes later, he walked into the waiting room carrying 2 cups from a decent coffee shop and a bag of pastries. Amy looked up with interest. Is that the blind date? Amy, this is James. James, my sister Amy. James shook her hand, his doctor smile warm and professional. Nice to meet you. Sarah mentioned you were having a rough night. Rough doesn't even begin to cover it, but Sarah's handling everything as usual. I don't know how she does it. She's pretty amazing, James agreed, and the way he looked at Sarah made her cheeks flush. He stayed for 2 hours, through the end of the surgery, through the surgeon's post-op update, through the waiting for their father to wake up in recovery. He explained medical terms Amy didn't understand, made phone calls to expedite insurance approvals, and generally made himself so useful that Amy whispered to Sarah, "If you don't keep this one, I will." When their father was finally settled in his room, groggy but stable, James excused himself. I have afternoon appointments, but I'll check on him tonight when I'm making rounds. Sarah walked him to the elevator. You have rounds at St. Catherine's? I thought you worked at Children's. I volunteer 1 evening a week in the pediatric ward here. It's part of an initiative to provide continuity of care for kids who get referred from Children's. He paused, looking at her carefully. "Are you going to be okay?" "I will be. Thanks to you. I didn't do anything. You showed up. That's everything." The elevator arrived. James stepped inside but held the door. "Sarah, I know this is terrible timing. You've got your father's recovery to manage, and I've got work and the twins. But I really want to see you again, soon, properly." Define properly. Dinner, just the two of us. No kids, no emergencies, no hospital waiting rooms. A real date. Sarah smiled. "That sounds perfect. When? How's your week looking?" "Complicated. I need to set up the apartment for my father, coordinate with his physical therapist, rearrange my work schedule. So, probably not this week." "Probably not." James considered this. "What if I brought dinner to you? Tomorrow night. You can show me how you're setting up the recovery space. I'll give you advice based on what worked for my mother-in-law, and we can eat takeout on your couch. Low pressure, practical, and I still get to see you." Sarah felt something warm bloom in her chest. "That's actually really thoughtful." "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes." The elevator started beeping, complaining about the held door. James grinned and stepped back. "Text me your address. I'll be there at 7. And Sarah, you're handling this beautifully. Don't let anyone tell you different." Sarah spent the next day in a whirlwind of preparation. She rearranged furniture, ordered medical supplies, cleaned obsessively, and tried not to think about the fact that James was coming to her apartment. It was just dinner. Just a casual evening. Nothing to stress about. Except she changed her outfit 3 times and cleaned the bathroom twice and put fresh flowers on the kitchen counter because apparently she did care about making a good impression in her own space. He arrived exactly at 7, carrying bags from a Thai restaurant and wearing jeans and a soft blue sweater that made his eyes look darker. The twins were with Mrs. Chen, he explained. They'd wanted to come, but he'd insisted this was grown-up time. "Though they made me promise to tell you hi and remind you about the aquarium trip." Sarah laughed, leading him inside. "I haven't forgotten." He set down the food and looked around her apartment with genuine interest. "This is nice. Lots of light. Good space. It's small, but it works for me. Well, worked. Past tense. Now I'm trying to figure out how to fit a hospital bed in here without making it feel like an actual hospital." They spent the next hour moving furniture and discussing logistics. James measured spaces, offered suggestions, and helped her set up the medical equipment that had been delivered that afternoon. It was domestic and practical, and somehow more intimate than any fancy dinner would have been. Sarah found herself relaxing, laughing at his stories about creative ways patients' families had modified their homes. Finally, they sat down to eat, cross-legged on her living room floor because the couch was now positioned to make room for the hospital bed. The Thai food was excellent. The conversation flowed easily, moving from family to work to the random things that reveal who people really are. "Okay," James said, pointing a spring roll at her. "Biggest fear? Go." "Being a burden. Ending up alone and needy with no one willing to take care of me the way I've taken care of everyone else." The words came out before Sarah could filter them, raw and honest. James set down the spring roll, his expression serious. "That's not going to happen. You don't know that. I know that you're kind and capable and the kind of person people want to show up for. I've known you for 48 hours and I'm already invested in your well-being. Imagine how people who've known you for years feel." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "What about you? Biggest fear?" James was quiet for a moment. "That I'll let the twins down. That I'll be so focused on being both parents that I'll forget to just be their dad. That they'll grow up and realize I wasn't enough." "You're more than enough," Sarah said firmly. "Those kids adore you. And they're going to grow up knowing their father did everything he could to give them a good life after the worst thing happened. That's not something to fear. That's something to be proud of." He looked at her with such intensity that she had to look away. "How are you single?" he asked quietly. "How has some smart person not locked you down already?" Sarah laughed bitterly. My ex-husband would tell you I'm too intense, too focused on helping everyone else, too willing to put my career and family before our relationship. He wanted someone who'd make him the priority, and I just couldn't. I thought marriage was supposed to be a partnership where you both showed up for each other, but he wanted a cheerleader, not a partner. He was an idiot. Maybe, or maybe we just weren't right for each other. He found someone better suited to what he wanted. I hope they're happy. Do you mean that? Most days, some days, I'm still angry about the time I wasted trying to make it work. But mostly, I'm just relieved. Being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel alone. James nodded slowly. After Melissa died, people kept trying to set me up. They meant well, but it always felt wrong, like I was betraying her memory by even considering someone else. It took me a long time to realize that moving forward doesn't mean leaving her behind. She'll always be part of my life, the twins' mother, my first love, the person who made me who I am, but I can honor that and still build something new. Is that what you're doing? Building something new? I'm trying to. If you'll build it,